Hello! Thank you for checking out this petition. We are actually going to be taking a bit of a different approach to this, and what we're looking at is players getting off the line in Kael, but a little bit too quickly getting off the line. What we're looking at right now is humanbenchmark.com and their reaction time data. Now, they have about 81 million reaction time points out there, and that's the data we're taking off of. So for this petition, we are looking at Kael races only. Why Kael? Because there's no zoning, there's no load times. Also, we're only looking at races that start with a roll. No race on pop. There's just, again, too many variables there. What we want to see is we want to see everyone attempting to get off the line at the same time. We don't want people worrying about lag from other screen shares or anything like that. We want people at their best when they're ready, when they're not fatigued, so we can see optimal reaction time. Now, I do believe that the same alleged pixel detection that was used in Koth races, which I feel was part of the reason why we no longer do Koth races, I think that can be used to the same effect, if not an even greater effect, on race on pops in Kael. So they're not out of the water there, but again, for this analysis, we're only looking at rolls in Kael. So let me tell you a little bit about Human Benchmark. This is a plot of data points taken directly from Human Benchmark in their reaction time test. There are over 81 million data points on that website available, used specifically for reaction times. Now, what we're looking at here is a normal distribution. You have the faster reaction time people here, and then you have the average people, which ends up being about 255 milliseconds, and then it tapers off from there. Now, there is one caveat to this, the human limit. You cannot have a reaction time faster than 150 milliseconds, and the reason is because of the way the brain processes it. This is a nice diagram of how that actually happens and what goes on, and this whole process takes, at the fastest, 150 milliseconds. This should be representative of what we see our racers. The first person off the line should be here, and then very shortly after it should be one or two more people until we start to get into this pack. And the way we're doing this, we're going to very quickly get into the pack because that's only going to be a few frames on the videos we watch until you're right at this average speed right here. So this is what we're looking for, and this is going to be our method for how we determine if it's a legitimate race or if we're dealing with statistical outliers. So the first video we're looking at is the infamous Kickenit scripted video. You guys have all already seen this, but again, we're looking at it from a different angle. We want to focus on reaction time, and we really want to look for that normal distribution we see from the players earlier, like we saw on the Human Benchmark graph. Again, Kickenit, right here, he is in the Vindy breastplate, and Stunningly is in the teal behind him. Their names are kind of going over top of each other, but this is Blood Eye right here. Interesting thing about this, I did not know that this was the infamous video, right? I don't care who it is, if they're in my guild or not. I don't want anyone having an unfair advantage. So if they're in my guild or not, I'm reporting them. And I actually didn't know that this was the video of him doing it. So this will actually serve as a proof of concept, because this is what actually taught me that my methods for detecting cheating based on reaction time and a normal distribution, that they actually work. So here's the video, okay? The rolls are happening and they're off. So this is it. What we have is number 3 off the line is this guy right here, DIU. I don't know his full name. In front we have Blood Eye, and right behind him we have Stunningly. And if you look at the difference between them, it's actually 167 milliseconds. I can go through that with you if you want. It involves me essentially frame by framing through. Okay, ignore give insert this person here, but you see those two get off the line right away, and then boom, a third person finally gets off the line. And then if we look at it more, you see a few more people get off the line, and yeah, you can see the server updated his position a little bit here, similar to how it did with Give Answer at the start, how he appeared way off the line and then came back. But yeah, here's our normal distribution we have. People are taken off the line at relatively equal increments. Give Answer is right behind a little bit. He inches forward a little bit, and it appears like he teleports. We're not reporting Give Answer, by the way. This is just an example of how difficult it really is to see things with fraps. See right there, the roll happens, he's taken off right away. Seems physically impossible. Boom, rubber banded back because he just twitched. He didn't actually run. So These are the actual culprits right there, those two. So what we got to do now is we need to calculate this out. Here's our 167 milliseconds. Now, the formula I used for this is if you look at the server from the server's perspective, what happens is at time equals 0, a roll happens. This 982 roll happens. Okay, that gets sent to the players at half of their ping. So players with a faster ping receive this information quicker and they can react. So ping divided by 2, because ping is round trip time. So half the ping, then their reaction time. So there's a pause while they actually react. And there's a nice little graph right here of what happens with your reaction time. You see it on your computer. Your brain does a bunch of processing, and then it goes all the way down to your fingers. And this motor part, that's the slowest part, where the signal has to pass all the way down your spinal cord, all the way down through your shoulder, your arm, your fingers, and then you finally press the button. And then that button gets sent back to the server at ping divided by 2, and that's where your ping comes in. So it's half ping, reaction time, other half of the ping. But we're not looking at first-person perspective. We're looking from a cameraman, so you have to subtract half of the cameraman's ping as well, because right here, Runyon is the guy recording. They're actually further ahead because his ping is so high. It's difficult to see here. It's 134 milliseconds is his ping, so we'll be subtracting 67 milliseconds from this time as well. First off, this video is at 30 frames per second, so 1,000 milliseconds divided by 30. Each frame is 33.3 milliseconds, so that is one frame. Now, stunningly gets off the line 8 milliseconds after the roll. So 8 frames, excuse me, not milliseconds, 8 frames after the roll. So this number times 8. So he got off the line 266 milliseconds after the roll, as seen by the cameraman. So what we need to do is we subtract half of that ping, which we said was 67. 199 still humanly possible. Remember, 150 is that mark. And in fact, the Olympic sprinters take this number so seriously that if you get under 100 milliseconds reaction time, if you're off that line 100 milliseconds after the gun, it's a false start. That doesn't count. They say it's humanly impossible to react that quickly. So anything under 100, no shot, no chance. And if you remember our normal distribution curve, there was no data points under 100 milliseconds. Those were all false starts. So we're at 199. Now we subtract Stunningly's ping. And for this, we have a nice little video here of him. And I'll play through this video. This is a response video made. Somebody a while back reported Stunningly on his bard in Dragon Necropolis, swarm kiting a bunch of spiders, and they said he was botting because his circles were perfect. Now, we're not reporting him for that. That's not what we care about. What we care about is this little number right up here in the upper corner. It's a bit difficult to see, number one, because I ripped this video from YouTube, so I lost a bit of quality on there, and then I'm also making another video with this, so again, I'm losing a second entire layer of quality on that. But it says 108 milliseconds is Stunningly's ping, which is a high number because we have to subtract all of that. And we end up with a 91.6 reaction time. According to the U.S. Olympic Committee, they've got some big acronym for it, but they would call that a false start. 91.6, humanly impossible. This test right here is the proof of concept. So we're also going to look at Kickenit because Kickenit beat him. Let's look at him. His reaction time, he was off the line in 6 frames, multiplied by 1,000 milliseconds, divided by 30 frames per second, 200. Again, he's in the region there. Subtract half of that cameraman's ping, 67, 133. He's not in the human possibly realm anymore, and we haven't even subtracted his ping yet. And we subtract his ping, which Kickenit himself told me is 38 milliseconds, 95. Stunningly's number was 91.7. He's at 95. So even though he's in the lead, that is entirely because of his ping advantage, right? He's off that line 70 milliseconds faster, but that's entirely his ping, okay? They're really reacting at the same time, which is no coincidence because he's cheating and the guy getting off the line at the same exact reaction time, logically, we can only conclude that he's using a similar program. Okay, but this isn't it. We've got many more races to look at. For the second race, we have Again, stunningly here, you can see him. He is the teal ogre and the purple name, so this will be good to identify who he is. So again, looking at that reaction time, you have the rolls right here, and if we go forward one more frame, we have our number. Now we're going to frame forward and see when he goes. So the roll happened here, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that is the frame stunningly moves on. So let's do some calculations for his reaction time here, just like we did before. So 8 and multiply that by 1,000 frames per second. Divide that by 30 frames per second in the video. And we get 266. So 266 before we calculate any ping. What we do now is the ping of the cameraman is 37 milliseconds. You can't really see it here. Again, I ripped the video from YouTube. I lose a substantial amount of quality when I do that. But 37 milliseconds is the cameraman's ping. So 37 divided by 2 is 18.5. So we subtract 18. 248. Still perfectly good, but again, stunningly's ping is 108 milliseconds, so we drop that by 108, and we have 140.7 milliseconds is reaction time. That is not possible. So, but that's not the main detection method. The main way you can see this is if we go forward more and we look at this. See, look at the lead he's got here. Before, it was him and Blood-Eye, the guy who was confirmed cheating. Now it's just him. But what we're looking for is the normal distribution. So, right there, Splendility is moving. Okay, he moves on that frame. Next frame. Oh, we see Nomatron moving. We see, I believe this ogre is Valakut. I've looked at a lot of fraps, so I can just kind of tell whose frame, like who's moving and based off their character model. So boom, right now we have one guy. This guy would be the leader of the pack. Now 2 people are moving. We go a little bit more. We have more people moving again, and then you're going to start to see a lot more people moving. This is the standard distribution we see. Okay, this is what we're looking at. So stunningly, who moved 8 frames faster than everyone else, he also got off the line on frame 8. But if you ignore him as a statistical outlier, everybody else fits perfectly into that graph. Moved on frame 1, moved on frame 2, Nomatron Prime. He probably is, yeah, you see this? Look, they're the pack. The pack is what we look for, and then we look for any statistical outliers. Now, to get a better view of this, we actually have several fraps of this same engage, so that is video 1. For the second video, we have another side angle view, and again, what we're looking for is relatively the same thing. So right here we have the 955. Stunningly's off the line. This video is actually done at 60 frames a second, so it's a bit smoother. People are less jumpy. And again, we see the same sort of thing right here. That huge lead, a long time, and then boom, you see other people moving right away. And then if you ignore one person who's a statistical outlier, everybody else fits into that normal distribution, which we'd like to see. So if we calculate his reaction time for this video, Stunningly is off the line on frame number 15 times 1,000 frames divided by 60 is 250. Again, subtract the cameraman's ping, which in this video it is 38 milliseconds, so subtract 19, and then we subtract that 108 milliseconds, and we have actually an even faster reaction time on this, 123 milliseconds. For the last video, unfortunately this one is in first-person perspective. Most of the fraps I looked at were in first-person perspective because people are just trying to race. They're just trying to get there. They're not worried about who may or may not be using third-party software to get off the line quicker. So this is a guy who's a very good racer, and he's just trying to get there. But the important thing we can get from this is this boot right here in the side of the screen. This is Stunningly's boot, and once the race proceeds a little bit, you'll actually be able to match up the boot to the person. So if we frame forward to the point where he moves, which is that frame right there, He moves, he gets a little bit of a lead. You can see the teal, that is Stunningly. And if we do our own little reaction time for him on this one, so he's off the line in 16 frames on this. And again, this is 60 frames per second. 1,000 milliseconds divided by 60, that number. Subtract half the cameraman's ping, which it's difficult to see here because there's a little ice wall behind it, but I have it written down as 124 milliseconds, or 62 being the half, because the cameraman is the person racing. So right there. And then we again subtract that 108 milliseconds that he has, and we're at 96 millisecond reaction time, 96.7. According to the Olympics, this one is a false start. So even though we have 3 different videos, the reaction time is showing up as ranging from 96 all the way up to 140. Mind you, all 3 of those break the human limit of how fast you can react. In the way the server works, and the way the server updates people, and the way you see things as a cameraman, you always take the lowest number. And we go back to our proof of concept, and what was his reaction time in that first video? It was 91.7. So this one closely matches our proof of concept. For the remainder of the videos, I want to focus less on the reaction time. I believe we proved that and we put the nail in the coffin, and I want to look more at the standard distribution in that model versus statistical outliers. So a lot of our fraps get worse here because we're going all the way back to September fraps. So these are first or third person perspective, and it's not clean. We don't have the race line. We have to kind of guess on what's happening here based on this. So what we have is, in this video, we have Stunningly in the top. He's levitated very high, and then slightly below him we have Dontoc, which is a racing bot, but typically that is piloted by Furoars. So if we frame forward, and then right off the bat Stunningly is off the line, and he appears to be off the line on his own. But again, remember what we said about the server updating people's positions. What we have, Dontoc standing still, teleports out in front. So he actually started much later, but for whatever reason the server didn't update his position to this particular cameraman. If we had multiple fraps of this, we'd get a much better view of this. But what we're looking for now is we're focusing on the standard distribution. So who's the next guy off the line? Okay, we got the big watermelon head ogre. I hope that's not racist. Who am I kidding? That's terribly racist against ogres. And then we got the pack here. Okay, so it looks like a big jumbled mess full of people. We can't tell who's getting off first, who's last. Well, actually we can. This guy right here, he's dead last. I don't know what this guy's thinking. But what we have is we have our beautiful standard distribution. Now if we back it up, we have again the 2 statistical outliers here. We now have Stunningly, and instead of Blood Eye this time we have this other guy, Dontoc, as statistical outliers, and then we have everybody else moving up, with these 2 way ahead of the pack. For the next video, unfortunately, we have another first-person perspective. This is old fraps. This is all the way back on September 20th. The 3 people we're looking at here is we have Stunningly, Furoars, and then another guy who's a little bit buried in here. His name is Maschenny, but we'll see that as we go. Again, because these first-person perspective races, we're not going to be able to count the milliseconds. What we're looking for is we're looking for the pack, the standard distribution, and anybody who takes off before that, well before that, any statistical outliers. So what are we looking at here? This looks like a jumbled mess. Everybody around me, this boot, this is Stunningly's boot. So that gives us an indicator on when we see this boot move is closer to the actual race. Okay, so we're going to start framing forward here until we see that roll. There's the 941, and then boom, Stunningly is off the line. Again, no one else has moved. We're all sitting here. Okay, a second person has moved. And then once we look, it's cleared up. We have these three, Furoars, Maschenny, and Stunningly, all ahead of the pack. So again, it could be server just updating their position at weird times, so we'll see if they stay that far ahead. So far, there's been no movement at all. Basically, they're running in a straight line, and once we get to this corner, then there is human input being needed. Actually, it looks like Maschenny is a little bit further back. He's the human here with the idol in his hand. And the server updates his position, but it actually looks like Furoars is ahead of Stunningly here. And then as we watch the server update their position, they teleport forward. Yeah, all three of these guys seem to be way ahead of everybody else, with Furoars actually leading Stunningly in this, and we've seen the amazing reaction times that he has. So I'll let this video play out a little bit more. To me, it just actually gives me a headache looking at this video, and then there's a turn. They're all right next to each other. For the next video, again, we're going further back in time. The videos get worse and worse the further back because we weren't looking for this. This, again, is just first-person perspectives of people racing. This one is quite possibly the most difficult one because we have this stupid, fat-headed ogre right in front of us here blocking our entire view. But this video is all the way back August 26th. This is about 2 months ago this happened. So playing through the video, again, we're not going to be able to count the milliseconds because we can't see the race line, but we're looking for normal distribution. Let's see if we get it. So right off the bat, two people jump out to an amazing lead. One person is off camera, the other person is in camera, is our friend Stunningly. The other person is actually above him, appears right there. And then now we have the ogre moving, the troll moving, and we start to get other people, and way ahead of everybody else are these same two people from the last race we just watched. And yeah, it's statistical outliers, both of these people. For the last video, we have a bit better angle on the race line. Again, it's an old video, so it's not going to be the cleanest. We're not going to see everything because the person swinging the camera, they're just coincidentally swinging over here and looking at the race line. It's not perfect view of the race line like we had before on the more recent videos. But what we're looking for, again, normal distribution of the pack. We want to see when the pack leaves and who beats the pack. So some key players to look at here. We have Alexii, this bar with the blonde hair, and we have Furoars right behind them. Alexii is a bot, and anyone in the entire guild could be on this bot. I'm not sure who's on it, honestly. So what we have here is we have the roll. Right off the bat, Alexii is immediately off the line, followed very closely by Furoars and Kickenit. But Kickenit didn't actually move. This is another one of those phantoms. Maybe they were twitching at the line, maybe they tapped a button, but they actually get rubber banded back because they didn't actually move. That was the server trying to predict their position. Alexii and Furoars, though, are well out in the lead. And then now we finally have this guy right here starting to wake up. Now Kickenit is starting to move. So Kickenit, very fast reaction time, matching this ranger right here. And then we go forward a few more frames. You see these people down here starting to move. You see some new name tags popping up, and the pack is gone. The pack is moving right here. So this is, if we ignore Alexii and Furoars, we got that normal distribution that we want. Now let's take another look at the statistics of this, because the entire argument hinges on the statistics. So we're looking at the data points from humanbenchmark.com, again on reaction time. From this set of data points, we can find that the mean reaction time is 255 milliseconds and the standard deviation is 35 milliseconds. Using that, we can now calculate the probability of someone reacting faster than another person by a certain amount of reaction time by grouping it together on how many standard deviations that person was beat by. So if we go to this right here, Stunningly is beating the next fastest person off the line by 200 milliseconds, and the odds of that happening naturally are 1 in 3.5 million. Now this is further compounded on the fact that he's not beating just one person off the line, he's beating all of these people off the line by that amount or greater. And what we've done here is we've actually plotted out some data points based on stunningly beating the next fastest player off the line. And you can see each time it's floating at just below, all the way up to 350, all the way down to 150, and it is a blowout each time. There are no close races when it is involving him. Now, one last data point here, number 9. This is blacked out because this is actually a race stunningly was not featured in. This was the race of Alexii in Furoars. And again, you can see it fits perfectly within this graph, and you can see how much they beat the second person by. Now, you may be thinking that this has ping, and a higher ping has something to do with this. But again, the humanbenchmark.com graphs factor ping into it. So this is all before ping is subtracted. And on top of that, the player stunningly has an abysmal ping of 108 milliseconds. So to be able to get this level of advantage with that poor of a ping is astounding. Now, up until this point, we've been purposely avoiding race on pops. We've only been looking at rolls. The problem with race on pop is you could be sitting at this line for hours on end and you're not fresh and you're not going to have peak reaction time. So let's do a quick play out on what the possibility of a auto fire with pixel detection could look like on a race on pop. Keep in mind, this is the same mechanic that was allegedly used in Koth races and why those were banned. And you can see with a race on pop, there's a huge disparity in the racers. Now, if we go back to this, we see right off the bat, Stunningly and Timmy Jr. are off the line miles ahead of everyone else. Now this could be explained by the fact that one is a bard and the other is a shaman, and they are both bind sight classes. In Discord over here, where they're going and the statue still hasn't appeared in Discord, that could be explained by them being bind sight classes and having that advantage. But the real question is, how much did Stunningly beat Timmy by? One bind sight class over another. That's actually 6 frames, which is 200 milliseconds, and that fits perfectly into the graph we showed earlier. If nothing else, we've demonstrated that third-party software can give people a significant advantage in getting off the line. One solution to this is remove random rolls entirely. We can do a system like a ready, set, go system. This would completely negate reaction time as a whole and any advantage that auto fires would give in people getting off the line. We could do something similar to what NASCAR or Formula One or drag racing do, where they have a series of blinking lights. And the thing is, it's the same timing every single race. This could be done in a simple macro, and then everyone gets off the line at the exact same time and we have a fair race. The downside to this is the rest of the race, and players can use a tool-assisted speed run. Tool-assisted speed runs maintain the #1 way of cheating in any racing game and any speed run. They're the most common way of cheating, they're the most effective, and unfortunately they are the most difficult to detect. They are virtually impossible to detect unless you can see the direct inputs from the player. So P99, I don't think we have that capability to see this. It could go on undetected. In fact, competitive speedrunning has had tool-assisted speedruns maintain on the world record leaderboard for years, and in some situations, decades. So the safest alternative is to get rid of racing entirely. Now, a good example of an alternative, the 96% rule that we had for a while was fantastically successful. It requires the coordination from multiple people in a guild, and that anytime you have to rely on multiple people for a target, cheating is going to become much more difficult to happen. Another thing could be a Bedane type rule. For targets like Dane, King Tormax, and Statue, you could do a simple roll. Everybody shows up at the time of pop, similar to Scout and Angry Goblin. Everybody rolls, and the winner's guild gets a target to pull. Now, you could put a time limit on how long they have to pull it in, and there could be a punishment if they fail to kill it, similar to Bedane. A third one would be just a simple rotation. that would completely remove any cheating possible because it's rotated. You could even do a semi-competitive rotation, similar to how we do bag limits for does, where you have 30 minutes to pull it in and kill it, or Avatar of War has a 20-minute lockout. That seems to be fine for Avatar of War. Or you could even do a very simple 5-minute. It spawns, your guild's up, you got 5 minutes to pull it, bring it in camp, and then after that 5 minutes, it's free for all, or it could even just pass to the next guild.